Hey all, today I'm painting up a sample of my new dungeon tiles. For those that don't know, these are my own 3D printed dungeon tile designs from my Snap Tile series, City Streets. More on that later. I start these off with a simple Rust-Oleum primer. I use a dark grey on the brick pavements and the walls, then I give them a light grey zenithal. The same light grey goes on the flagstone roads. These primers are great, but I feel I need to shake them a little bit more, otherwise I end up with this glossy surface I've got here. For paints, I use a mix of cheap craft paint as well as some army painter. For the main surfaces, I dry brush these with those cheaper paints, which I just got from the craft section of a local hardware store. I use a terracotta orange for the brick and an off-white for pretty much everything else. Since I'm using a larger amount of paint, I use a piece of plastic rather than a palette. I just want something I can easily throw out later. Then I grab a cheap makeup brush, load it with a bit more paint than I usually would for dry brushing. So what I'm doing here is probably somewhere more between a dry brush and an overbrush. I'll do a few layers on each tile to ensure decent coverage, just making sure to leave that dark grey in the recesses. I'll repeat that on all the tiles, using my orange on the pavement and the off-white on the flagstone roads. Once I'm happy with the orange coverage on the pavements, I'll go in with that same off-white for a more traditional dry brush, picking out the edges. This will help to desaturate that orange a little bit, and bring it closer to the tone of the other tiles, as well as adding a little bit of colour variation. I'll repeat these steps on all the little pavement edges as well. Next, I'll use the same off-white to dry brush all the stone elements of the walls. I'm not worrying too much about going over the wooden details since I'll paint those later. Here I'm just making sure to get nice definition on the rocks and create good contrast in the walls. With that done, I have attached the little shop inserts to my painting handles. You can pick these up on my mini factory for a few bucks. These are great because the caps screw on and off, so you can print as many caps as you like, have all your minis attached to them, and then just have a few handles lying around. They're easy enough to swap out. There are flat caps for double-sided tape or glue, but also recessed caps for blue tack or poster tack, which is what I'm using here. For the wooden details of these inserts, I start with Army Painter's new Fanatic paint line, specifically Oak Brown. I'll make sure to cover all the wooden surfaces, and I'm not worrying too much about going over the bits that I'll be repainting later. And then I'll just move on to picking out all the wooden details on the walls with the same Oak Brown. Now feels like a great time to tell you a bit more about Snap Tiles City Streets. They are the second series of Snap Tiles, which are 3D printable, modular dungeon tiles that let you use any wall with any floor in any configuration. Instead of printing dozens of different tiles for corners, walls, and hallways, you can snap any number of walls to any side of the tile. If you want a shop front with a window on the corner, you just snap it together, rather than needing a specific set of tiles. The Kickstarter is live right now. City Streets was funded in the first 12 hours, so we're well on track to start unlocking some awesome stretch goals. So jump on over and check it out for yourself. Now I take Army Painter Onyx Skin and dry brush all the wooden areas. This helps with desaturation, making the contrast a bit less stark and picks out all the details nicely. Making sure to show off all of the nice wood grain textures in these designs. As you can see, I've also picked out the reds on some of the shop inserts with a darker red. I've done this on all the apples, some of the potions, and the grimoire in the magic insert. With the wood done, I'm going to move on to the metal details, the door handles and the hinges. These are done with a silver metal mixed with a tiny amount of black and blue. This will give it a cooler tone against the warmth of the greys and browns. I also pick out some insert details like the amulets, the magic orb, and the grimoire's binding with this mix. After that, it's just a matter of finishing off these details. Some orange for the fruit insert, blues for one of the potions and an amulet, and green for the last vial and the magic orb. Then I use some lighter colours to add some simple highlights, edge highlights on the potion and some point highlights on other details. After a coat of matte varnish, we can go ahead and clip these all together. The clips I'm using are printed in a black PLA, but you could easily print or paint these to match the colour of your tiles. And now that the floors are connected, it's as simple as snapping in the pavement edges and clipping in the walls. Then I'm just going to drop in the shop inserts, and we're done. Let's take a look. I'm really happy with how these painted up, and can't wait to get a whole set done for my next D&D campaign. If you're interested in picking up the 3D print files yourself, the Kickstarter link is at the very top of the description. And if you don't have a 3D printer, but maybe have a friend who might be interested, please share the video as well. Every bit helps. Thank you so much for watching and for checking out Snaptile's City Streets. Have a good one.